form that says, would you like to be considered for federal work study? And I tell everyone to say yes. There is a TEACH program. If your student's going to be a teacher, check with the school to see if they participate in this grant program, and then determine if your student wants to participate. They have to teach in certain fields, and then they have to teach in like low-income, underserved areas, or it reverts to a loan. So some students may not want that. But definitely check with the school if your student's going to be a teacher. Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant is an award for students who lost a parent in the War on Terror. And the AmeriCorps program is a community service program. Students complete a community service assignment, they earn money toward their tuition, and then it gets paid directly to the school. AmeriCorps.gov is the website. You can check that out to see if you'd be interested in that. We do have AmeriCorps students in the mayor's office, for example. Pennsylvania programs. The first one is the Pennsylvania State Grant. 4348 is the maximum award for this year. Probably is going to be similar for next year as well. And that's if you attend a private institution. It's based on the cost of the school. So if you go to a state school, the maximum is about $3,600. You go to a community college, the maximum is about $2,300. So when you get your award letters, the Pell Grant will be the same on every award letter, but the state grant might be different, and the reason will be the cost of attendance at the school. If your student's going out of state to school, financial aid process is exactly the same. There could be a small state grant with the exception of New Jersey, New York, and Maryland. We do not have reciprocity with those states, so you can't actually take Pennsylvania dollars to those three states. The other works, like I said, it's a minimal award, but it's a little something that they can take back home. There is state work study, so if students don't qualify for federal work study, they still want a job on campus, you can check with the school to see if they participate. EAP is an award for National Guard students. CHAFE is an award for students who are in the Department of Public Welfare system. There's a blind or deaf beneficiary grant. Post-secondary educational gratuity program is an award for students who've lost a parent in the line of duty, such as firefighters or police officers. PATH is a matching funds scholarship program. If you go out to FIA.org, there's a list of scholarships that participate with the PATH program, and then if they earn one of those scholarships, they could apply and get a matching funds PATH scholarship from the state as well. NEED, for example, the scholarship participates with the PATH grant. And then the PA TIP program, this is a new program for this year, and it will be continued for next year. It's for students who are going into fields such as energy or manufacturing, and they typically are in programs that are less than 2 years in length with like a certification, so they don't qualify for state grant. They still qualify for their federal money, but then the PA TIP program would fill in where that state grant would be missing. We have students, HVAC students, for example, that would qualify for this grant. So if your student's going to go into a trade, check at FIA.org to see the list of schools that participate, and then you can look and see which majors actually participate with this grant. I would like to tell you that there's just tons and tons of free money in the grant programs. Unfortunately, most students do end up having to borrow. Average four-year college student will come out owing about $27,000 in federal direct loans. It's about $300 per month for 10 years is what the payment looks like. So again, like I said, you just want to think about, your students haven't borrowed a penny yet. So you just want to think about that ahead of time. Affordability, do they need all of that money? They're going to package you for the maximum loans at the school. If you don't have to borrow all of it, then you just don't take that money. You can tell them, I only want to borrow $2,000, and that's it. And they'll reduce that for you. StudentLoans.gov is the website. That's where students are going to go complete promissory notes and entrance counseling. So, like I said, the school will automatically tell you qualify for this amount of money in loans. If the student chooses to borrow, they still have to do the next couple of steps at StudentLoans.gov. So they have to go out, ask for a promissory note, 20 pages of fine print. If it's a loan, they have to pay it back. This is what happens if they don't. Nobody reads 20 pages of fine print. So they have to complete entrance counseling. They have to read a paragraph, answer a couple of questions. Then it's a loan, that they have to pay it back, and this is what happens if they don't. There are two types of Stafford loans. There's a subsidized portion, there's an unsubsidized portion. The subsidized portion does not accrue interest while the student's attending school. Once they go into repayment, it's currently at a 3.4% interest rate. You're going to want to pay attention to the government this summer to determine what happens with this loan's interest rate. There's a provision in the law that will expire on June 30th, and if Congress does not renew it, this loan will go up to 6.8% in repayment. So more to come on that, but you definitely want to just take a look at that this summer. Unsubsidized loans, they do accrue interest while the student's in school. So you're not required to make any payments on loans while the student is attending school on these federal loans. You're not required to pay them. However, the unsub loan does accrue interest while they're sitting in class. If you can afford to make the quarterly interest payments, you're going to want to do that. And the reason is, all of the interest that accrues while they're in school is added together repayment, it gets added to the principal, and then they start paying interest on top of interest. It's called capitalization. So, like I said, I'm going to give you a calculation in a second to figure out what that might look like, but if you can afford to do that, you're going to want to contact the loan company and do that. There is a 1% origination fee taken from these loans. So, when you get your bill in the summertime, if you notice that the net amount looks a little different than you thought it should look, it's because the government took a 1% fee out of these. This is how you calculate that daily interest. So the interest rate on the unsub loan is 6.8%. Let's just say that the student borrowed $2,000. You take 0.068 times 2,000, divide by 365 days. This loan is accumulating 37 cents of interest per day while the student's sitting in class. If you multiply that times 90, that's about $34 every 3 months that you would owe on this loan. So it's not horrible, but that's just the first year. So you add the $2,000 from the next year, you add the then the payments are going to go up. So just keep that in mind. If you can afford to make that payment, you're going to want to do that. These are the 4 servicers. So once the loan is booked at the school, one of these 4 companies will contact the student and they'll say, I'm going to be your level loan servicer for your loan. You need to contact that company and tell them, I want to make quarterly interest payments. They're not automatically going to send you those invoices, so you need to actually actively request that from one of these companies. But one of these companies will contact your student. These are the loan limits. So a freshman student can borrow $5,500, $3,500 of which could be subsidized if you qualify for the subsidy. So that's based on that need calculation that I showed you at the beginning. If you have enough room left over after your Pittsburgh Promise and after your grants, if there's still enough room in that sub-calculation, you get the loan money subsidized. There is additional unsub money for students whose parents will be denied for a plus loan. So we're going to talk about plus loans in a second. But as a parent, if you're denied for a plus, the school gets notified of that, and the school automatically processes a $4,000 unsubsidized loan for the student. So if you don't need all of it, you need to call the school and tell them to reduce that. Otherwise, they will process the maximum. Instead of $5,500, they can borrow $9,500 for that first year. This is how students will end up getting a lot more than just your typical $27,000. When you see these students with those extra debt, this is one of the reasons. $27,000 average for your student. $310 per month would be the payment for 120 months for 10 years. Let's just, over the course of 10 years, this loan accumulates about $10,000 of interest. So your $27,000 loan became $37,000. Let's just say that you sit down ahead of time and you determine we're going to go to a less expensive school, or because of the Pittsburgh Promise, we're not going to have to borrow as much. So we're going to keep borrowing to a limited $4,000 per year. That's all we're going to borrow. If you did that, or whatever number it would be, $16,000, it's $184 per month as opposed to $310. So it's almost in half. That's going to be a lot easier for a student to make. It only accumulates $6,000 of interest as opposed to that $10,000. So there are repayment calculators all over the internet. Finaid.org is where I got this one, but studentloans.gov, that direct loan website, that has calculators out there too. So you can sit down ahead of time and plug in the numbers and just kind of see if my student borrowed X amount of dollars over the course of 4 years, what's that payment going to look like? And if they're only going to make $30,000 coming out of college, are they going to be able to actually make that payment? So that's one of the things when you sit down and strategize where you want to attend school, that's one of the things you might want to look at. Federal Plus Loan, parent loan for undergraduate students. This is an opportunity for a parent to borrow for their student. If there's a balance at the school, and you'd like to borrow for your student, you can certainly do that. This loan is at a 7.9% fixed interest rate, so it's very high. You can do much better on a home equity loan, I know it. So it's an opportunity. If you'd like to apply, you certainly could do that. Studentloans.gov is where you're going to find this application. And we do have parents that apply for this loan in hopes to get denied so their student can borrow the additional unsub money. If you do that, it's a credit-based loan. If you get approved for this loan but you really didn't want to borrow it, you just don't sign the prom note. So you don't actually have to borrow it. But like I said, some parents will do that in hopes to get that additional money for their student.